Hi, this is Lorraine Wilburn from Ohio, and you're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, which is part of the Demcast family of podcasts, and I am on today with a returning guest and friend, Lorraine Wilburn, who is an activist in Stark County, Ohio. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi, Kelly. How are you doing?
Great. It's good to have you back on. So Lorraine and I talked the first time about the organization that you had helped to found. And then we talked a couple times when you were running for state legislature. And now we're back to talk about activism again.
Yes. Back to activism. I did not win my election, unfortunately, but it was really an incredible year. So, but I'm back at it, back working, making sure that we get some women in office here locally, as many as we can, with gerrymandering, and that we win on the national level as well.
Yeah, excellent. So we'll talk some about the local stuff as well, but I wanted to talk to you about these Fire Drill Fridays that you've been going to in D.C.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got connected with that and decided to start doing that.
Well, honestly, I was feeling kind of down. I've been, after a year of campaigning and 2 solid years of constant activism, I was feeling pretty tired, and I took a break from it all for a while. And, and none of it went away. It was always there, and I was sort of always paying attention, but not doing anything extremely public or active. And then I was feeling really down about everything, and I decided that it was time for me to do something. And I'd been getting the emails from them. I'm connected to so many groups, as many of us are. We get a lot of emails and text messages, and, we're watching them on social media. But I kept getting emails about Code Pink and what they were, and the Fire Drill Fridays and what they were planning to do. And I thought, this is just the thing I need. I need to do something big that'll kind of snap me out of my funk. And that's exactly what it did for me personally. But the goal of this whole thing, the Fire Drill Fridays, is to bring more attention to climate change and action in this country. Right now we're seeing explosive demonstrations all over the world, and we are far, far behind that here in the States. And so Jane Fonda decided that she was going to go every Friday to D.C. She actually moved to D.C., and every Friday was going to protest with the understanding that she could potentially be arrested. But her goal was to bring attention to climate change with her celebrity. And I think it's been somewhat effective. That every Friday is bigger and bigger. The first one I attended was pretty small, and they've grown quite a bit to now several hundred showing up. And, between 50 and 60, I think, were arrested last Friday. Yeah, that's what Code Pink is about. Code Pink is actually they're an anti-war organization, and they have, they've brought attention to many anti-war movements for the last, I think maybe 40 years or so she's been around. Jody Evans is one of the founders, and she's involved with the Fire Drill Fridays as well, and she's been there every Friday, so she's a pretty incredible person. But that's how I ended up being there. I just needed something to give me that push again, to reawaken it for me. And that's what it did. It was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. So how many times have you gone now?
I've gone 3 times now. And I was arrested on one Friday when we were in the Hart Senate building. But I'm getting to the point where in D.C., I've been at numerous protests where I've risked arrest, and I'm at the point where I'm going to end up spending a little bit of time in jail if I get arrested again. So I think I've reached my limit for that. I don't want to spend a few nights in jail at this point. But it's been a really incredible experience, and as I always say, it's I have the privilege of having a very easy and comfortable arrest in D.C. As a white woman, it's a very different experience getting arrested in D.C. probably than a lot of other people would have. But D.C. is also very accustomed to protests and peaceful protests and people being arrested. People are arrested every single day in Washington, D.C.
So what is the sort of legal reason that people are arrested? What is it about the protest if you go into a protest knowing that you might get arrested, what is the actual sort of charge that they're making when they arrest you?
Well, it's kind of a silly charge. It sounds silly. It's called incommodable, and it really just is like a French word that means blocking traffic. So, in D.C., you are allowed to protest just about everywhere except on a sidewalk or, in a building or on the steps of a building. You can't block someone's ability to walk freely. And that's generally what the charge is when you're protesting in D.C. And it tends to be a pretty low fine. They're so accustomed to it. It's, you're charged and released as soon and you pay your $50 fine and you go. And it's a pretty clean and easy process. I mean, they've got it down to a science there in terms of processing people and getting them out. And, you walk away with a $50 fine. But it really is, for a lot of people, it's more about drawing attention to an issue. Like, I've been asked a lot, like, what do you get out of being arrested? Like, what's the point of it? When you feel like you have no other way to get it out there, sometimes, a massive group of arrests can bring attention, or, like in Jane Fonda's case, a celebrity bringing attention to it by being arrested. It's just, trying to draw attention to your issue. I think that people tend to, when you're protesting in Washington, D.C., we're kind of making an intentional decision to be arrested. Like, we know if we sit here and we don't move, we're going to be arrested. And with the sole purpose of bringing attention. I don't personally really get anything out of it except the satisfaction of, I'm trying everything I can to get people to pay attention. This is the reason I really was drawn towards this issue more recently, because a lot of my activism work has been around, electoral politics. But this issue in particular, my 12-year-old son and I had a conversation not too long ago, and he told me that he sometimes cannot sleep at night because he knows what's going on with the climate, and he's very, very concerned about the legacy, the future that we're leaving for our kids and our grandchildren. And that really struck me. I knew that he was aware. I knew that it's the environment is something that's of particular interest to him. His father is a geologist. These are conversations we have in our house. But to really realize that it was causing such anxiety for him, that this is something that he loses sleep over, made me realize that, I knew it was a terrible situation we were in. I know climate change is, literally the planet is on fire. We are in dire straits here. But looking at his eyes and thinking, I'm not doing enough on that topic, on that particular issue, I decided I needed to do something to kind of make him proud too, and make him feel like the people in his life care about this issue that is keeping him up at night. So that was a big reason for me, sort of, rerouting my activism towards climate change. And I've been getting a little more involved in some of the groups that are focused on climate change more recently.
And you brought your son with you one of the times, right, when you went to D.C.?
I did. He actually, a couple of weeks ago, packed a bag and secretly put it in my car. And then I don't know what he thought he was going to do, like stow away in my car, but he really wanted to go. And I knew that this particular week was a week that it was probably 100% I was going to be arrested. So I didn't want to bring him with me, obviously. But he really wanted to be there. He wanted to make his voice heard. And so I promised him I would bring him back. And I did. The next Friday, I brought him back. And he had an amazing day. He's done a lot of stuff with his mom. He's done a lot of campaigning and protests and things like that. But this was probably the biggest scale thing that he's ever done. We had a lot of people there, and we had 3 protests actually converged together at one point. We had Dreamers United, who were, the DACA kids who were there protesting immigration and Dreamers losing their status in the Supreme Court and all of that. And so they at one point their march kind of joined up with ours, which was a really beautiful moment. We actually swapped chants. We started doing their chant and they were doing our chant. And it was just one of those like incredible moments. People were hugging and high-fiving and, one of those solidarity moments. And it was really cool for him to see that. And then, of course, we joined up with the impeachment protesters as well. So he saw all of these people exercising their rights as citizens to say, this has gone horribly wrong for me. And it was a really cool day for him. But he he got the bug. He's like, now I want to go to all of them. I want to be there for everything. And he said, I think every kid should be at these because the planet's being left to us. You're making a mess for us. And this is the thing that really matters to us. And he said, all that other stuff that you're focused on is great. He's proud of all the work that I do. He's proud of me for running for office. But it's climate change that really matters to him. And yeah, he had an incredible day. He had like this kind of awe-struck look on his face the whole day. And, walking past, we marched that day. So for 2 miles, walking past all the buildings and being in Washington, D.C., which is always really cool for, when you're that age to see all of that. But, yeah, it was a great day. It was a great day. And he definitely got the bug. I think that I am probably raising a lifelong activist.
That's excellent. I love it.
Yes.
He should start a youth activist podcast.
Hey, he's a great talker.
So I know not everybody is able to get to DC. So let's talk some about local activism too, and things that people can do. So for people who haven't been listening from the very beginning to this podcast, the way you and I actually met is that my mother, who lives in Stark County, was convinced that there were no other Democrats in Stark County, Ohio. And so I was doing an episode on the politics of Ohio and said, there's got to be some. I'm going to find them. And I found you.
You found me. Here I am.
So talk to me some about Action Together Stark and what you did sort of in the 2018 cycle and what you'd like to build the group into moving forward.
In 2018, we were really focused on our local elections. We had 3 members of our group, 3 women in our group running for office, which included myself, Lauren Friedman and Cassie Gaybelt. And we were all running for State House. And we also had Ken Harbaugh running for Congress, who was not really a member of our group, but had come to speak to our group a few times. And when he first mentioned that he was running, some people connected him with me. And I said, come meet our group. Come talk to us. He hadn't formally announced or anything yet. He hadn't filed. He hadn't even raised that much money at that point. And he was sort of exploring it. And so I said, come meet our group and we will we'll give you a run for your money. You're going to get some really tough questions from our group because we've got a really smart group, and that's exactly what they did. And I think he really built his platform partially out of that meeting, out of the questions that he got, because he really saw what was important to the people in this community and in his district. So anyway, so that's where we were in 2018, was trying to get as many of us in office as possible. And a lot of that effort was focused on canvassing, as you know, because you came and canvassed a few times with us, canvassing for candidates up and down the ticket, statewide, and, wherever we could help in any way, we tried to, and as a group. And we were doing phone calls to voters. We were doing postcard parties, letter writing parties, you name it. It was pretty much 2018 was pretty much focused on the election. Previous to that, we'd done a lot of stuff, sort of disruptor stuff with our congressmen and things like that, and the Affordable Care Act and all of that. So it was kind of a changing of gears for us to focus on the election. And that's kind of still where we are in my mind as a group. I really do believe that the only way to bring about real change is to get some better people in office who are going to represent our values in office and who aren't going to be easily bought. And that's a real challenge. One of the things that I learned through running for office is that we put a lot of emphasis on early fundraising numbers in terms of viability of a candidate. And I think it's a huge mistake, because there are a lot of amazing people out there who would do very well in office, but they won't do very well campaigning if that's the way we're going to measure their success as a candidate, because they don't have the connections. They don't have the network of wealthy donors to tap into. And I was one of those people. It was really difficult for me because I don't have a vast network of wealthy friends to beg for money, and fundraising is a really huge part of campaigning. And so going forward, some of the things that I see our group doing is really sort of elevating as many candidates as we can, and pushing fundraising and doing some of the groundwork where we can for local candidates and even for, more national level candidates, to try to elevate them without the ability to fundraise and get those big dollars in the beginning. A lot of those candidates get ignored by their party and oftentimes by people in their community because they're not seen as viable because of fundraising. So I want to make sure that we're out there knocking doors for those people and saying, hey, they are viable, whether or not they have $1 million in the bank. This is a great candidate. So that's where I see us going.
Yeah. And so one of the challenges in Ohio, of course, for people who have not been looking at Ohio maps is that Stark County, which is one of 88 counties in Ohio, actually has 3 different congressional districts because of terrible line drawing and state legislative districts that don't line up at all. It's an enormous challenge, I think. What do you find that people sort of even know what district they're in, are thinking about?
No.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
No, I mean, it's impossible even for the candidates sometimes. There were times when I was canvassing and, sometimes I kind of went off list and if somebody was out in their front yard, I would go talk to them. And one time I did this and I had literally stepped into the next district. So without realizing it, that's how silly these lines are. They chop up these communities. And sort of separate. I mean, you have an allotment that is actually divided in half in terms of your state house district. So it's crazy. The gerrymandering is out of control, and we're hopeful that it'll be corrected. After the census, and we passed it with flying colors. So our state house, hopefully, we'll handle this the way that we're asking that they're supposed to and draw some fair lines. So in the future, we are hopeful that it'll be easier for candidates to run for office and easier for voters to know which district they live in and who the representative actually is. That was a big part of the education process when you're at doors, is telling people which district they're in and who their representative is. And with the added challenge of term limits in Ohio, people flip seats to stay in office. So we have, we have a state senator and a state representative right now who have been flipping seats for over 16 years now to stay in office. So people are never sure which one is representing them at any given time. So there are a lot of challenges here in Ohio.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think Stark County, so for people who are not as familiar with Ohio, this is where Canton, Ohio is. The Professional Football Hall of Fame is there. And I think that I always thought of it as sort of a swing county when I was growing up. And it was like the county that chose the president for a long time. It feels anecdotally like it's more Republican now. And I think the voting numbers bear that out. But it seems like the kind of challenges that people in Stark County face could really be well served by progressive candidates, by progressive issues, that would be something that could really help. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what the people in Stark County are facing, what all that looks like?
Well, some of the issues that came up when I was running for the state house were obviously jobs. Jobs are at the forefront. A lot of people are worried about jobs. A lot of people are worried about the cost of health care. Stark County this area went Obama, Trump. So I don't necessarily, I know that the numbers right now look as if we are a Republican area, but I actually think we are more swing voters. People, can switch their party very easily here by voting in a primary, and a lot of people don't even realize that has happened when they go and vote in a primary, and they're like, oh, now I'm a registered Democrat. I didn't know that's how it worked. So I tend to ignore some of those numbers because I don't think the voters are really intentionally thinking that in those terms. But they really do. A lot of people really consider themselves independents, even if they have a registered party at that moment. But on the doors, people are really concerned with the everyday stuff. We're losing our population here every single year. I've read a few different statistics. One of them was 5%. Every 5 years we're losing, and we have excellent colleges here, but our students graduate and leave because there really isn't a whole lot of opportunity for them here. They go to the bigger cities or out of state. So we kind of have this brain drain happening in Stark County. We have, we are doing pretty well in terms of cost of living. Home ownership is definitely still very feasible for a lot of people here, but the cost of healthcare is skyrocketing as it is for everybody else in the country. And those are the big issues that I heard when knocking on the doors, and they were sort of the big equalizers. And when you are good at explaining progressive policy and how it can change those things for them, they were very receptive. As long as you weren't putting a party sort of category on it, like this, this is a Democratic or this is a Republican policy. As long as you're really good at just saying, this is a policy that will help you in your everyday life, this will change your life in these ways, people are extremely receptive to it. And I will tell you, I was never afraid to talk to anyone. I had, while I was canvassing, a man saw me coming, and I think he could read me a mile away. He knew I was one of those Democrats coming to knock on his door. And he ran out and put his Trump sign in the yard. And his wife was on my list, but I was kind of, he had met him and his wife somewhere else before. And I said, Robert, you might be trying to scare me away with that sign, but I'm going to come and talk to you anyway. And so we actually had, and he said, I give you a lot of credit for that because I did try to scare you away with that sign. But we had a long conversation there on his front lawn. And at the end of the conversation, he shook my hand and said, I really respect, I respect you for having this conversation with me. I did try to spook you. You stayed, you had the tough talk. And, we need more of this. And now I'm realizing that some of the things that I wanted in voting for Trump, are some of the things that some other candidates can offer as well, if I'm a little more open-minded. It was one of those amazing conversations where you're like, why can't I have this conversation with everyone? But it's definitely there. The need to draw our lives by party lines right now, sort of on, the social media world, really falls away when you're having a one-on-one conversation with people. People want to be heard, and they want solutions. That's the bottom line.
So it sounds like, despite everything, that you remain hopeful, that you think that there is a way out of this mess.
I kind of have to remain hopeful, or we have to hold on to some hope, or it sort of all seems useless and fruitless. But because I think having those conversations really did help me feel more hopeful. When you're looking at social media and you see how angry everyone is at each other and kind of all the nastiness that goes on, it can feel really hopeless. and it feels like we are really divided and we're never going to get it back. But when we're out there having those one-on-one conversations, it feels very, very different. And that's the challenge, is convincing people that what exists on social media is not what exists one-on-one. And I don't know how much longer that's going to be true if we don't start having those one-on-ones more often than those sort of antagonistic interactions on social media. I do worry that we will veer so far away from each other that we won't be able to have those conversations. So that is something that's particularly important to me, is sort of reconnecting people and encouraging people to talk to voters, talk to your neighbors, talk to somebody in the grocery line. And don't talk to them in terms of which party you belong to or who did you vote for, or with any judgment. Just try to make a connection. We need to bring that back.
I love that. So if people are able to get to D.C. on Fridays, how do they find out a little bit more about Fire Drill Fridays?
Well, Fire Drill Fridays has a website. It's firedrillfridays.org. And then you can also connect with Code Pink. They are sort of the lead organizers with this whole, with this action. And this is, Jane Fonda is doing this through January, but I don't know what their plans are past that, if they're going to continue on or maybe refocus on some more, some different actions. But so you can connect with Code Pink as well, depending on your, sort of area. A lot of people are getting really disgusted with sort of the war machine, and Code Pink is bringing those two issues together: climate change and war. And climate change is going to definitely bring about more war in this world as we're fighting for resources more and more, and we're already seeing it. It's already happening all over the world. So you can get involved with those two groups. But I would also encourage you to get involved locally. Not everybody, like you said, not everyone can go to Washington, D.C. and be arrested. But there's so much we can do locally. There's smaller projects that you can get involved in, specific environmental projects you can get involved in if there's something that really is important to you. And if you live near one of the lakes, and you can get involved in protecting and preserving our lakes. Or just something, in your immediate community. But I think we all really need to be turning some focus towards this issue. It is a little distressing when you see literally thousands of people in the streets of London, and all over the world. And then in America, it's sort of like it's just a little trickle. We need to be getting really involved in this issue and getting out there and getting vocal, because they're just not listening. And then and then of course getting people in office who will protect our climate and do more to do what we can to affect climate change. But there are a lot of organizations. There's Extinction Rebellion. There's a lot of organizations that are doing some more aggressive activities locally. I just did a search the other day, and Extinction Rebellion has a chapter in Cleveland, and not anywhere closer to me, but they're all over the place. So that's someone that you could get involved with locally. And then, of course, your indivisible groups, your Action Together groups, your Together We Will, and anyone else who is working towards more progressive policy and progressive candidates in their communities. I think people have been... a lot of people have been working really hard, and a lot of people got tired. So we really need more people to step up and get involved. We need to see some more energy. I'd love to see more young people get involved in some of these groups. And I know that they're doing a lot of work on their own as well. But my thing is, what I always say in our group is give one Saturday a month. If everybody gave one Saturday a month, or whatever day of the week that you were able to give, if everyone gave 4 hours a month to a cause that was important to them, we will get a whole lot of work done in these groups. So help us out and give us 4 hours a month, and we can accomplish a lot together.
Awesome. And if we have some people who've stumbled across this who are in Stark County and are feeling hopeless, how do they get involved in Action Together Stark?
Well, we are on Facebook. Action Together Stark has a public page that you can connect with, and through there's instructions on how to get involved in our private group, which is where we discuss actions that we're going to be taking and events that we're setting up. And we're happy to have, more energy, new people come on board and connect with us. We are locally are making a really strong effort right now to connect with all of the sort of smaller activist groups and some, really old, long in existence groups like the NAACP and some faith organizations to kind of pull our resources and our human capital here and do more together. So I'm really hopeful in Stark County that things are going to go really well in this election cycle. We have big plans to get out there and do a massive push amongst all of our groups to have a better turnout for the 2020 election and to have a better result for the 2020 election. So now's a great time to get involved.
All right. I love it. Well, Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast again. It's always fun to talk to you, and I love all the action that you're taking. I just think it's fantastic that you've been going to D.C., and I am really excited to hear about all of it.
Great. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.